Here we are. We are live on various channels. Welcome, Jurgen Appelo, to the show.
Hey Mike, hello Saket. Thanks for
Saket, hi
joining.
Jurgen.
Bivalkar. We've got an amazing topic today. And everybody who knows Jurgen Appelo, many do already, he's one of the creative people on the circuit of modern leadership. Agile leadership has been one of his topics. What is it, 12 years ago when you published Management 3.0, right?
12 years, yes. It was January 1st, 2011, officially was the release date of the book. Yeah.
Yeah. So tons of interesting things have happened since then. And maybe you give us a little bit of a personal intro, both of you, a little bit talking about your background. But then we'll talk about a very, very interesting topic, your latest work, and a new term, which is actually not 100% new. It's already been used some years before, the versatile organization. Yeah, it's not the agile and not the adaptive organization. It is something attached to what we've been experiencing over the past years. But let's first of all jump into a short intro. Maybe Jürgen, you want to start?
Well, my name is Jurgen Appelo. I am here in Rotterdam, the Netherlands, my hometown. I am actually a software engineer. I studied at the university in Delft, but I was too bad at programming, so they promoted me away into management positions. And actually, I enjoy that because I have quite broad interests. And one thing led to another. I publish books on Management 3.0, leading agile teams and developing agile leaders, and some other books on changing the world, how to change the world, managing for happiness, etc. So I have been digging into the management and leadership stuff basically since I quit my job in 2010 when I was CIO at a company in the Netherlands, where I implemented all the ideas that I have and that I borrowed from many sources, basically. Since then, when I quit my job, I've been a speaker and author and a workshop developer. No coaching consultancy. I leave that to very talented people such as Mike and Saket. I do the 30,000 feet view, as I always say. I look at the patterns in the world and connect the dots. That's what I'm good at. And then I hand it over to others to make it useful in their context.
All right. Wonderful. Saket, what about you? Maybe a few words from your side.
Yeah, thanks, Jurgen. Thanks, Mike. So I'm Saket Bivalkar, based here in Barcelona, where the next workshop is taking place. I hope I'm saying it right because I don't know if Sofia is happening before, but next one at least close by is Barcelona. So versatile as a term is at least not new to me, as Jurgen and Mike both know. It's the name of my company for since 2003. The context was a bit different, I would say, but still, it is something that passionates me, versatility in the organization, even as a person. So yeah, as Jordan said, doing coaching and consulting on business agility, and versatility of the organization in general. So nice to talk to you, both of you. Awesome.
Wonderful. And I think we three share a lot of history already. We met, 10 years ago. I think Agile in Europe was one of the initiatives Jürgen started where we met.
Yeah,
And also I met Saket, and we've been collaborating since then. And
2011. Yeah.
yeah, it's a long time. And now we're collaborating on the workshop in Barcelona, the versatile organization. That's our topic for today. And let's jump into this right from the beginning. This is your current work, right? What you focus on, Jürgen, and you've been publishing a lot of things around that, and you're running workshops. But what is it about? What's the versatile organization? Where's it coming from? Why? Why now?
Well, I noticed a couple of things that were changing post-COVID, basically, that are important for the Agile community, in my opinion. And we'll talk about these things pretty soon. And I thought, okay, so that's basically my next challenge. What is next for us as an Agile community? Because we know how to move from projects to products, and we know about value streams and all this stuff. Okay, done there. Not that everyone is good at it, but we've covered it. but we have a couple of new challenges ahead, I think. And I thought, okay, well, let's dig into that. I do not have all the answers. I'm just pioneering. And I want other people to pioneer with me, to share our thoughts and ideas and learn from each other. I think I have some cool topics as part of the workshop. And yeah, I needed a name for the workshop that was not agile or lean or something boring like that. So I looked in the dictionary for any synonyms for adaptable, etc. And then I saw versatile and thought, yeah, that sort of covers it, because I think the organization of the future needs to be able to deal with many crises and opportunities in a short amount of time, and basically change direction frequently. And yeah, you could call it adaptive or adaptable, but that is for me a bit too reactive. Adaptation means you respond to a change. It doesn't mean that you cause the change. That's what innovative companies do, right? They cause the change that other people will have to adapt to. So adaptation doesn't really cover it for me. And I thought, okay, versatile is more neutral. Then you can respond to a change, or you can cause the change, but you are flexible in what you're doing. So that's the name of the workshop. I'm not sure if the term will survive a couple of years, but for now, it serves my purpose.
Cool. So, Jurgen, I think since 2011 that we know each other, motivation has been one of the topics that has been in your repertoire. You know, there was moving motivators in Management 3.0. I think motivation since then has changed, or the topic itself has evolved quite a lot. And I have been seeing that this is part of the versatile organization workshop as well. So could you elaborate more where it's going now?
Yeah, so let me step back to the bigger topic. Experience is what I'm after. The customer experience, the employee experience. I've seen that as the big things, plural, in the last couple of years. Actually, a few are actually also making the connection that customer experience and employee experience, they go hand in hand. And I think that is the next step for the Agile community, to be honest, because we're still so focused on the product roadmaps, product backlogs, product owners, product managers, you name it. It all starts with product. But the experience is a more holistic thing. Then you look at it not from your perspective as a company where you deliver a product. No, you look at it from the customer's perspective, who has an experience with your company, which is triggered by your use, by their use of a product. But it is more than that. And I have examples of good products and bad experiences, and vice versa. So yeah, I want to take experience as the paradigm from which to sort of reevaluate the things that we have been doing. And one of those is motivation. What are the things that motivate customers to use products? What are the things that motivate employees to work for companies? And indeed, I have made that moving motivators game in the past that was specifically focused on motivation in a work-life context for employees. It was meant as a one-on-one tool between a manager and a worker. You could use it in other contexts as well. But I explicitly left out some drives such as food or intimacy or things like that. And I thought, okay, well, if I want to take experience as the more holistic thing to focus on, then I have to go back to motivation and reevaluate all those models, the Maslow's hierarchy of needs and the 16 basic desires of Stephen Rice and self-determination theory and Daniel Pink's Drive, famous book. And so I went through all of that again. I came up with a different version, a more holistic picture of motivation with 24 drives. And for me now, that is the starting point. I now use this to understand, okay, what are the triggers for my customers to use my product? What are the triggers for my suppliers and business partners to work with me? Is it belonging? Is it recognition? Is it, I don't know, any of 24, many of 24 could apply. Yeah, it's just a tool. You could show it on screen, Mike, if you want. It's two-dimensional, and basically, I did what I did with moving motivators as well. I tried to match all the drives that the different sources came up with. This is not scientific by any measure, so don't mistake me for a scientist or a researcher. This is just me making a useful palette of motivation, as I say. You can compare it with the paint colors that you find at the local do-it-yourself store, right? And you have this palette of colors, and they're not all colors, but it's a useful set to work with. It's a bit the same that you can treat this model in a similar way. And then someone said, well, 24 is a lot. Can you somehow categorize that? And I thought about that, and I thought, well, I know two ways to distinguish motivation. One is need versus desire. That's based on two-factor theory by Hertzberg, who said that some things demotivate us when we don't have them, but they don't motivate us when we have them. Like, I'm not feeling motivated because I'm healthy right now. I feel demotivated when I lost my health. So that's a need. We want to get it back. And it's the same with freedom. It's the same with certainty, for example. But desire is something that we pursue. We want beauty. We want creativity. Those are opportunities. So that's the vertical axis. And then the horizontal axis is intrinsic versus extrinsic. Many people know that. Some things we do because the activity itself is enjoyable, such as eating or resting, sleep. And other times it is the outcome that we're after. We aim for recognition or we aim for competence, and then the work itself can be very strenuous, sometimes even annoying, but hey, we do it because we're after the outcome. And then you have two axes, and I thought, okay, well, now I can play with those drives and see if I can put them somewhere. This is just my interpretation. Everything is context dependent. For other people, some of these could be lower or higher or to the left, to the right. I don't care. Just play with it. But now I have a tool to assess customer experience and employee experience, and that's important for me.
So as you said, this is just the start, right? We will definitely go in more detail during the workshop.
Yeah.
So from when I hear this, the sensation that comes to me is we need to make sense of how this can be actually used, and as well as for the organization as a whole, sense making is something quite important. So from what we are seeing, sense making is becoming part of workshop as well. So could you elaborate on what that sense making we are bringing into the workshop?
Yeah, so I've been interested in sense making and complexity for quite a while, as some people know who have read my work. I was triggered again actually by a game model, because I try to learn a lot from games because they are the ultimate product that waste our time, but still we want to use them because they make us happy.
Yeah.
That's the whole point of playing games, is to make us happy. Otherwise, we wouldn't want to use them. So no product managers in the world know as much about motivation and emotions, etc., as game designers, because they have to trick us into using their products, because basically they're a waste of our time. There's nothing functional about it. So that's very inspiring to learn from the games industry. How do they convince us to use their products? What makes us happy about them? And then there's this model that says we have basically the mechanics, the product, the game. We have the dynamics, the things that happen, that emerge, and then the experience. How is it perceived by by users and customers, their feelings, their emotions, their motivation. So in the middle, we have the dynamics, and that's basically where sense making sits. It is the stuff that happens because you play a game that could be intended or it could be unintended. It could be beneficial, it could be harmful. You try to plan some of that as a product designer, as a product manager, but you will be surprised sometimes at the things that people notice when they use a product or service, and that becomes an experience for them because of the dynamics that sit in the middle. So of course, I have my own sense-making model that I offer. There are others out there. I'm sure many people know the work of Dave Snowden with Cynefin. I use a slightly different wording and a different positioning of the domains. I have reasons for that. But I don't care which sense-making model you use, as long as you try to dig into what are the dynamics in the environment, what is happening around people, some of it caused by a product and other things caused by people's response to it. And then we can talk about things that are complicated or complex or simple or whatnot, chaotic. I prefer other words such as crisis instead of chaos, because the typical words that people use in sense making within other models, they refer to chaos. Actually, if you look at the stories and examples, they're always talking about crises, like the ship is sinking or the house is on fire. Well, that's a crisis. That's not chaos. It's a crisis. That's different. So I call it by its proper name, in my opinion. And I have crisis in the middle. That's the pit where you don't want to sink into, basically. But hey, shit happens. Sometimes you end up in crisis mode in the middle, and you'll have to deal with it and try to get out. Everyone ended up in the middle 1.5 years ago. When COVID-19 rolled around over us in the entire world. So yeah, this is my offer as a sense-making model, and it's great to have conversations about that.
Cool.
That's quite interesting. I'm just thinking about the target group, those who are obviously nowadays in organizations, looking for solutions to fixes to their problems. And again, Agile, I think, is a little bit of a suspect there. That it sounds like a quick fix. People just try to install it, and at the same time, we recognize what you're talking about happens a lot in modern, smaller startups, scale-ups at the end, like Spotify is being embraced, and at the same time, the copy-paste doesn't work. But what do you think? I mean, these models, this topic of versatile organization, whom would you talk to other than Agile coaches? I mean, I think that is one possible target group to say, hey guys, there is more to think about. There is a deeper and broader perspective to look at and engage people. Any other target groups, like, I don't know, managers, HR, what is it? You're basically longing out for, or reaching out for?
I am aiming for anyone who is after understanding what comes next from their role. So that could be HR, it could be middle management. I say the product managers and the change managers for sure, because they are working on either products or companies that need to survive in the next couple of years. Actually, we're also discussing the job to be done in the workshop, which is another important topic, where I have learned from job to be done theory that we often too easily aim for demographics, like people with these age ranges and these genders and these job titles, etc. But job to be done theory says stop it. Don't do it. That's how you sell something through marketing and advertising. But you need to figure out first, in terms of your target audience, what is the problem that you're solving? What is the job to be done? And then it could be anyone. I remember actually, I had a similar aha moment. It was maybe 10 years ago when I was sitting in a coffee bar in Brussels, in my hometown, enjoying my coffee, and I was looking around me, and I saw diplomats, because this was Brussels. I saw young people in sneakers and jeans. I saw three Muslim women enjoying their coffee. I saw very, very different people in the coffee bar, but they were all enjoying their coffee. So I thought, this is not about a demographic, right? You cannot possibly make a demographic out of the people who were sitting there in the coffee bar, but they all craved coffee. They all wanted to enjoy a place to sit for an hour, talk, or do a bit of work. So that's the job to be done. So if you ask me what is the job to be done of this workshop, then I would say have more understanding of what's coming. For people in any role, it could be HR, it could be managers, leaders, product managers, change managers. Some people are interested in knowing, okay, what is next? And as I said, I don't have all the answers, but I have pieces of the puzzle. And maybe together we can put a few more pieces of the puzzle to have a bigger picture.
And talking bigger picture, I think you brought one thing to the table, which is also part of the workshop. And I think that's something to elaborate a little bit here. It's called the unfix model. And I love the title already. Tell us a little bit about it. I'm not sure how long that would take, so probably we'll need to stay on a certain.
Well, I'm not going through the entire model because there's a blog post.
What's the idea behind?
The idea behind it is that I'm not satisfied with safe, less, dad, whatever, because I have been around Europe. I wrote the book, Startup, Scale Up, Screw Up. It's somewhere there behind me. I was at Spotify. I was at TransferWise in Tallinn. I was at Typeform in Barcelona. I was at Zalando and N26 and Flixbus in Berlin and Booking.com in Amsterdam. We have quite a few scale-ups that we can be proud of in Europe. I did not encounter SAFE anywhere. Nowhere are they doing SAFE. SAFE is for big bureaucratic organizations that want to try and be agile and need something that gives them a bit of certainty. And okay, that's an audience. I'm not interested in that. But the scale-ups do something else. And I try to capture the good advice and the things that I saw, the patterns in a picture like this. And it is suspiciously similar to the Spotify model, if I am honest. However, two things are important. One is, and that is something that I see coming up, is the fluidity of teams. And there's a book by Heidi Helfand called The Dynamic Reteaming, where she says that we should get better at forming new teams faster. And I totally agree with that. Now, if I say this, I already hear some agile coaches saying, no, we shouldn't do that, because teams need time to go through the forming, storming, norming, performing process. And then I say, do you know what the favorite quote is of Martin Fowler, one of the 17 signatories of the Agile Manifesto? He says, if it hurts, do it more often. And he has applied this to software releases. I am so old that I remember in the 90s, we released software once per year. And then Scrum came out and they said, why don't you do it once per month? And we were like, seriously, are you nuts? Once per month? It hurts. And then Martin Fowler said, yeah, it hurts. So do it more often. Then you will learn how to do it better and more easily. And nowadays we call that vintage Scrum, right? Once per 4 weeks. Are you nuts? We do it multiple times per day. Now, I think we need to apply the same thinking to teams. If it hurts changing teams, do it more often. You have to learn how to reform as a team, because in other industries, this is perfectly normal. At the BBC, when they send out a crew to do a news report, they take any cameraman and interviewer and sound engineer that they have on hand, and they will have to form a team right there. The fire department cannot wait for John and Sammy and Taffy to get together because they form a team and only they can do the extinguishing of a fire in an apartment. No, they have to work with anyone who is right there working at that moment, and they have to form a team. So I call them crews. In the Spotify model, they call them squads, but the words are not that important. But I find the dynamic reteaming a thing, one of those examples of the things that we need to learn to be better at. It is not a good excuse to say it hurts to change our teams. Then you'll just have to get better at it. And the other thing that I've tried to address is the matrix problem. Spotify has a matrix issue, which is that the chapter leads are line managers. And that is a problem. And I have worked in matrix organizations myself, a big one where I had a line manager in one direction and a project manager in another direction. It was not a problem for me, but I know other people suffer from it because those two managers, they don't even talk with each other. In my case, they didn't even know each other. The organization was so big. And then people have conflicts of interest, and then people get torn in two directions, and it's just very painful. And the Spotify model has a matrix problem as well. There's chapter leads who are line managers, but at the same time, they have the product managers or product owners, or whatever they call them, pulling them in another direction. I try to solve that problem as well. In this model, so no matrix and dynamic reteaming as the foundational principle, and yeah, I call it unfix because I like the word.
Right. Wonderful. So that's probably giving us a lot of discussion points. Saket, do you want to go next?
Sure. So I think from what I'm hearing, this is all going to come down to the habits that we have acquired over past 10 years, maybe in terms of Agile, and maybe a few hundred years before. So this is going to come down to habit change. I think this is one of the topics that will be discussed during the workshop as well. So could you bring us to what we will look at into habit change topic, please?
Yeah, for sure. So I think another thing that we are, to be honest, not so good at in the Agile community, and I take full responsibility there as well. We use workshops and presentations to tell people to change their behaviors, and that's not how behavior change works. I have learned from psychologists and sociologists. What we call practices are actually supposed to be called habits, the things that we do that are habitual. When a team has a retro every week, then it is a habit. It's not a practice. It's something that they do because it is habitual. And we want to make things habits. That's the ultimate goal of practices, right? That people repeat them regularly. So then we have to look at habit forming science. How do habits form? And then we will see that the advice is like the opposite of what is often preached with methods and frameworks. Like we have these books full of advice with large explanations of whatever. This is how you do a 2-hour retrospective. And then the habit experts say, no, that's not how you begin. You have to make it very, 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 very small, make it a very simple thing, and then create the habit cycle, make people return to it. And only when the habit is in place, and you need to have not only a tiny habit, something that is simple, but also a trigger so that you are reminded to do it again, and the reward, because you will not be triggered again if there is no reward. Only when you have that habit cycle, then you can start increasing the size of the practice. So maybe your first retro should just be 2 minutes at the coffee machine. Like the coffee machine will be the trigger. Every time we are at the coffee machine, we briefly talk for 2 minutes about what could we do better as a team. And then we need a reward for actually having discussed it. And so that's an example of what you could do that would be that would get the blessing of the habit forming experts. And we need to think in these terms when we want to introduce practices in the organization, and connecting it back to the unfix model. The base, or in the Spotify terms, the tribe, should be the primary container where you try to create all those habits, right? Because you want those flexible teams that can easily recombine. That means that most of the focus has to be at the tribe level. That's where we create the habits. That's where we introduce practices, so that people know how to work with each other. When you move things around, doesn't matter that much. They will have to get up to speed with maybe a different code base. Yeah, that will cost a little bit of time, but everything else is at the tribe or at the base level. And yeah, so I find habit forming super interesting. I'm trying to apply it to myself also as a human being. So, for example, I'm writing a novel at the same time. And one of my habits is, when I had my evening coffee, that's usually around 8, and I will have coffee in about an hour after this session. That is the trigger for me to continue writing my novel until I go to bed. That's the trigger, and then the reward is seeing my progress. And then I have made a tiny contribution to that project. Yeah, so that's habit forming. You see here the picture. My own revelation is that in the Agile community, we focus mainly on the green part in the middle, people's willpower, people's motivation, and increasing their ability. And that's good, but that's not enough, because motivation is an unreliable partner. Sometimes I'm just not motivated. It's just the way it is. I try to run every day, but sometimes I'm in bed in the morning and say, not motivated. It's raining outside. And then we have to rely on our willpower, but willpower depletes. It's like a muscle. It gets tired after a while. So that's not going to work all the time. And then ability, if it's too big of an effort, people give up. So that's what the blue circle is for. That's the habit cycle. The obvious trigger, the easy action, the instant reward. If you get that part rolling, and I call it the dynamo because you're sort of winding it up. In the middle, you have to rely on the blue part. But once you go through that cycle a good number of times, you should see the green part growing. That gets more solid, you could say, because that's what you're after. And then at some point, you can get rid of the blue wheel. It's like a training wheel. You don't need the training wheel anymore because you have your willpower, motivation, and ability. But rarely does the green part work. I mean, we all know that the gyms are full in January, and then by February everything is back to normal again, because people only rely on willpower and motivation, and that's not enough.
Yeah.
So that sounds quite an interesting bit also for leadership, right? So I could already imagine, changing our behaviors in leadership is obviously the whole thing about. And there's so many decisions we take unconsciously during the day to become more conscious about what direction do we want to go. So that's obviously a super interesting tooling for anybody who wants to create more consciousness.
And I learned that, I read somewhere that about 60-70% of what we do during the day is habits. It's habitual. So it makes total sense to understand more how that habit forming process works. How can we introduce something else in our daily life and make it a standard practice? Well, by making it a habit. So we have to understand how habits form, how we can get rid of bad habits. It's basically the same model, only reversed, you could say. And that's what we need to get better at in the Agile community, because we have, to be honest, too many PowerPoint presentations beamed at each other. And fingers crossed, hopefully this has an effect on some people. Well, usually not that much.
Wonderful. So for anybody who's watching, feel free to drop us any question. Jurgen is here for really live interaction. It's not just a one-way presentation here. And before we get any possible question, here's another one. You mentioned the normal, like we're getting back from January and February to the normal, and this triggers me to another question, because 1.5 years, nearly 2 years into something we call the pandemic, which has changed quite a lot of habits, or well, forced us to change the way we work, the way we meet, the way we collaborate. And I think one part of your model and your work here is also about this famous word remote. And most organizations here struggle with what does it mean for them, and what shall we do now? Like they're talking about hybrid. What are your thoughts about this hybrid working models, and specifically, let's start with remote work.
Well, if you look at publications such as Harvard Business Review, you will see that a lot of them are about hybrid working nowadays, because well, the McKinseys and the PricewaterhouseCoopers have done their research, and it turns out that 20-30% of people never want to go back to the office anymore. They have enjoyed their time and were actually quite productive while working from home. But another 20-30% of people do never want to work from home anymore. They crave to go back to the office. And then there's this chunk in the middle where people say, well, a bit of both would be nice. So it's all over the place. And given that the employee experience is getting more and more important, we have to listen to our workers, understand, okay, how can we achieve some kind of optimum now that we know that it can work, having people work not at the office. I don't like the word remote, even though I use it myself regularly because it has become so ingrained in our language already, but it's a silly term, to be honest. I mean, I'm not remote from any place I am supposed to be when I work online. I'm online. I'm working digital, or whatever you call it. So I prefer digital instead of remote. Even worse is coming back to work. I saw that again this week. The return to work policy. Oh my God. Do you mean that people have been watching Netflix for 1.5 years that they have not worked?
Right.
So language is important in my opinion, but companies have to figure out how to deal with this, and there are a couple of approaches that they take. Some organizations, such as Apple, have mandated a couple of the days in the week that people are supposed to be at the office. I believe Google has something similar, but a bit more flexible. While other companies say, hey, we'll leave it up to you, like Spotify and Salesforce. They all have their benefits and drawbacks, and it's good to have a conversation about that, because they're all options on the table, but nobody has yet like the perfect solution, and there is probably also not a perfect solution. You just need to know what are the positive and negative aspects of the different choices available.
Right. So, yeah. You go next, Saket. Will I go next?
Cool. You go next, Mike.
Right.
Please.
So yeah, the workshop is just amazingly full with top topics, which are super important. And as you said, no real answers yet, but a lot of good concepts, a lot of good approaches to start going. Right. There's another one where you dig into. It's the famous OKRs. It's something which is not new. I mean, it's pretty old, right? From the 90s. Suddenly somebody, found it, digged it out of the woods somewhere, because they figured out, hey, the MBO concept, which was pretty useful, didn't work because we tweaked it into a direction. So let's start a new one. What's your thoughts about it, and how do you approach it? What's new to it or different to it, or in this versatile org model?
Well, I embrace it wholeheartedly with minor modifications, plural. One is that I think we should have a choice in terms of time box versus continuous flow, as we have done in the Agile Lean communities with, well, basically Scrum versus Kanban, right? It makes sense sometimes to work with a cadence of time boxes, because I have cadence every now and then, and it helps me. It is very human need to have a rhythm to things, and to have milestones and deadlines that helps with focus. But others say, hey, for us, continuous flow is better with a limited work in progress, and that's just an alternative. I noticed that basically OKRs as offered in the books, has made an explicit choice for time box cadence. And then I think, why? What's the reason? I could not find a reason specifically for that, other than it has offered some positive aspects of time boxes, as Scrum has suggested in the very same way. But then I think, well, for similar reasons, we can switch to continuous flow. Like, I now have an OKR for make a successful workshop. I have not set a specific time box for that. It's just my only OKR right now, and I work on it for as long as it makes sense until I think, okay, well, I either give up or I think it's good enough. And then I pull in the next objective, or maybe I pull in a second while I'm still working on this one, but I think it's going well enough so that I can take on something else. Why does it have to be a cadence of every 3 months? So I think people should have a choice, and then do whatever is best for you. But the whole concept of objectives, key results makes perfect sense to me. I'm not changing anything in that sense. The only thing that I have as an additional suggestion is that that famous 70% in OKRs. You have your committed OKRs, where you have 100%. I try to do everything here because everything is known area, known terrain. But there's also the aspirational ones where you say, well, if I get to 70%, and actually it's probably decent job because it's a stretch goal, and part of what I do is unpredictable. Then I say, okay, well, why not 50? Why not 30? Why not 10? There are other sweet spots that we can choose with the same reasoning. Give you two examples. If you're a supplier and you bid on tenders with big companies, then you're usually 1 out of 3, 1 out of 4. You will never ever get to a 70% score. That's just impossible. You can aim for, okay, we want to win all of them, but if you get 30%, that's probably a decent score, right? And it's probably not that bad. Another one is, as I said, I'm writing a next book. I could say, hey, I'm going for the million copies sold. I sold 100,000 copies with Management Theory. Oh, that will be my next bar, 10 times bigger. That's my next challenge. It should be a world bestseller. But to be honest, 100,000 copies is pretty good. So, and yeah, probably is going to be more around that range than 1 million. But I aim for 1 million. I'm setting it really high, and then say, okay, well, this is a 10% aspirational goal, not a 70%, but a 10% one. I'm aiming for the million, but I'm not beating myself up if I have 100,000, because that's still a good job. So you can have very aspirational goals of very different nature depending on context. I think the 70% is just like, okay, they came up with it and it seemed to work. Well, why not 50, 30, or 10? It's up to you. It's your framework. You have to adapt it. And if you like continuous flow, you have my blessing. If you aim for 50, 30, or 10 as inspirational, I think you can have very good reasons for doing so. I just give you those options, and then those are minor tweaks to the OKRs framework.
It's also an interesting pointer. I'm not sure what you think about it. Like, is the OKR concept, which is pretty nice. It's pretty simple. It's really gratefully, it's nothing sophisticated, to be honest. But isn't this stretch goal, this aspirational goal idea, still something where we're unskillful in handling uncertainty? I mean, for example, if I grow a new product, if I want to be an entrepreneur and innovator, there is no 70%. There is something where I can learn about leading, lagging indicators. If people like what I'm building, if they are fancy about, hey, great, I need this product, but I don't care about any percentage here. I'm caring about, the actual interaction with customers, the growth of a funnel towards a business model and everything alike. Isn't that something where we also need to be careful about not just following the next trend, which obviously OKR seems to be now because we have no better ideas, but and basically question more often what we're doing? And what you already said about new models, well, we can't know we need to drive a little bit better in the unknown.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's a good point. I mean, the role models, as you know, they're all wrong, but some are useful. Or as I sometimes say, they're all useful, but some fail faster than others. I find OKRs useful in the sense that they help me have focus. That's the main benefit, as often described. It's just a focus tool, because otherwise people go in lots of directions. So it's alignment of an organization and focus per team. And then it helps to just write it out. This is our focus for now. And if that is sufficient for you, hey, fine, good for you. It helps many people to make it measurable so that they can see that they are making progress. Because what does it mean, a quality, high quality, minimal viable product? What does that mean in a very concrete sense? And how do you know per week that you get closer to that objective of a high quality MVP? It helps people to think about this, and OKRs is just a framework that gives you some suggestions to go through that thought exercise. But you're totally right, Mike. It's just a tool. And it might be replaced if it's abused by too many people, as management by objectives was in the past. It might be replaced again by something else. We'll see.
So there is a workshop. We talked about it already a couple of times. We mentioned it, and Saket actually is the organizer, the host for the workshop in Barcelona, coming pretty soon. And Saket, how's it going with the workshop? So what's happening then?
So we are already confirmed, as we had already published, and I have been hearing that Jurgen, you are doing some experiments in each workshop that you are doing. So is there any insight peek that you would like to give on one of these experiments, maybe?
Oh gosh, to be honest, I have no idea yet. Every workshop that I do is an improvement on the previous one, because I use the input, of course. Hey, I practice what I preach. So people tell me this game didn't work particularly well, so I tweak the rules and then I try a different version next time. Things like that. So I'm not sure yet what I'm going to try. The topics are set. The outline is fixed, but I play with slides, and I play with discussions and games exercises. But the people probably won't notice until I tell them afterwards. Well, actually, this was the first time I tried this.
Cool.
They should not know that they are part of an experiment.
Cool. I'm looking forward to this on 4th and 5th of November in Barcelona. So I would be very happy to welcome Jurgen, you, and Mike, you as well in Barcelona soon.
Right, I'll be there.
As well. Yeah.
I mean, Jurgen has to be there. I'll be there. And I think it's an interesting thing. Again, it's in person. It's something whoever is watching this video or joining now, it's a rare difference to what people have been experiencing over the past 2 years. It's now getting back in person. I think everything is safe. That is important. I mean, safe with not Britain, as you might imagine. So it's all about. I'm not sure if you call it 3G also in Barcelona, in Spain probably. It's a European term.
Yeah, we have similar. So recently, Spain has taken down almost all the restrictions. Right. We are still gonna try to make the space as safe as possible, having 115 square meter of room for very small amount of people. Testing before we start. It's going to be an interesting one, since it's going to be the first one after almost 2 years in person, at least in Barcelona for me. And I'm looking forward. Yeah.
All right.
We're going to come in all vaccinated, probably. I get my second shot, I think, the other weekend. And let's see what happens then. I took the most strong one on the market, Moderna. So, I don't know. But gratefully, I'm not that young anymore. So the young people have the
here. Yep.
exactly, the green pass, all these things.
Yeah.
Yeah, so a lot of interesting stuff happening. The workshop in 2 weeks, and probably interesting to follow Jürgen's work around the evolution of these models and the work at shiftup.work. I think there's a couple of other topics there too. And yeah, and I would say get in touch with us, get in touch with Jürgen on various social media channels. There's interesting stuff to happen probably over the next few months to come. And from there was a very interesting conversation, and obviously just a few teasers into very interesting and, to say, complicated topics. And I'm curious to learn more in the workshop.
Yeah. All right. Well,
Yeah.
I'll be there, and looking forward to meet people again in real life. That's so awesome.
Awesome.
Cool.
Thanks for having been here tonight, and see you soon.
Thanks for organizing.
Thank you.